said, my name's Rich Coleman, and I worked with Phil for 28 years, I guess is what it was. And you know, when initially when Heather said you have 5 minutes, I'm like, 5 minutes isn't going to cut it into my life, Phil Wilson. Okay, you know, for the first few weeks, you know, after I found that Phil passed, I started focusing on different things, different words that would describe Phil. You know, I came up with sophisticated. I came up with elegant. She always carried herself well, no matter what happened. She always presented that self, and she was very confident in her demeanor. And she always kept her cool. And Phil, forgive me for telling this story, but every month we would have a QA, we'd have a quality assurance meeting at one of the clinics. And she came in, and so we, you know, the doctors, the nurses, the social worker, dietitians, they'd all be there for the meeting. Well, Phil was running late one day, which Phil was never late. Phil comes in, puts her book down, sits too far back in the chair flips backwards, and I still have this image of Phil sitting straight up there. But what happened was, we all got up to go help her up, and she got up, and she adjusted her skirt, wiped herself off, and we lifted the chair up. She didn't say a word, she sat down and started meeting. That's just the kind of person Phil was. She always kept her cool. She always kept her cool no matter what happened. When all else around her would be, you know, losing their mind, Phil would be the port in the storm. You know, she always talked very respectfully to people as a boss and to people in general. And Phil never tried, and the power that she had as a boss, to destroy anybody. She would never ever do that. And she saw value in others that other people couldn't see. You know, and she could be tough when she had to, but she was always respectful. I remember one time she had to fire somebody. She called me in the office, said, will you witness me firing this person? And I'm like, sure, if you want me to. So I went in there, and she was talking to this guy, and as she was talking to him, telling him that she's going to terminate, he got upset with Phil because you terminated him. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, Phil gave you a chance to work here after you had problems at another job. She gave you a second chance, and she gave you a third chance, and now you're complaining that she's firing you. And he looked at me, and he looked at her, and he got up and walked out. Because Phil saw the good in people and the potential in people. And that she gave this guy 3 chances. And so that's just the way she was. She gave people chances to do better. There was another instance where she called me in there to fire somebody else, and she talked to this person. She talked to this person, like, very respectfully. You know, she didn't talk down to her. She just explained to her why she was firing her, and she was very nice about it. The girl got up and left. After that, I got up and closed the door and sat down, and I said, Phil Wilson, I said, you could tell someone that they're going to hell, and they'll be glad to go. That's just the way. That is just the way that Phil presented herself with people. Always respectful. And working with her 28 years in the job, you have no idea how many lives that Phil impacted. Just by being the way that she was. And the thing is, Phil led by example. She didn't just, you know, talk the talk, Phil walked the walk. She led by example. You know, after many years, we were sitting there in her office. We maybe worked together 20 years, and she says, you know, Rich, she said, you are the most unbiased person I ever met. And I told her, I said, that's because I worked with you for 20 years, and that's what you teach people, to be unbiased and to be fair to people. And that's just the way that Phil was. Whenever there was a problem at work, people would go in, or if I had a problem with work, the clinic, and the one that I was managing, and I would talk to Phil about it, Phil always had the solution. She always had the solution every single time. And so the first few times she came up with a solution, you know, I kind of fought back, and Phil was like, you know, this is what we need to do. This is the best way to do it. So like the third or fourth time, I said, okay, Phil, and I got him one. Because she knew what to do and how to fix problems. That's just the way she was. She always had the right solution. You know, it's hard to talk about Phil without talking about Lloyd as well. You know, in Judaism, it's felt that two people are born with half a soul. The matchmaker comes in, you've heard the matchmaker, that joins those two souls into one. Phil and Lloyd didn't need matchmaking. You know, you could tell that those two were made for each other. You know, we have Christmas parties at Phil's, in a local reception area or at Phil's house. We'd stop into him and I would be out, and we'd stop in for a visit at their house, or they would come out to our house, you know, and kind of look at the animals and do things like that. And even in fact, when Tim and I got married, we got married in a small ceremony in the backyard. It was just immediate family. But there was two people there that weren't family. One was Phil and one was Lloyd. Because they weren't family, but I mean they were family. You know? And so you could tell right away that those two were crazy about each other. Their whole lives, just the way they interact with each other, you know, the two of those was crazy about it. Just, you can't really talk about Phil without talking about Lloyd as well. You know, they both paid their dues, they worked hard. Phil had a hard job. Phil had a very hard job. She had 12 clinics. Managers now have 6 and they struggle. Phil had 12. And she worked hard. She had a very hard job. You know, they raised 3 good, successful kids. Then they retired. And they were going to move on, and then Lloyd passed. You know, don't ask me why things like that happen, and I won't ask you why things like that happen, because you don't know why things like that happen. It's tragic. You know, they live their whole lives, they get ready to go, Lloyd passes. And I can't imagine what Phil went through with all that. I don't think anybody can. The last time I talked to Phil, I called her, and I could tell that her dementia was kind of starting to take its effect. I could tell that it was, but I asked her if she knew who this was, and she said, yeah, this is Rich Coleman. And she asked me how Kim was, and we both worked with her. And she said something that ripped my heart in two. She said, Rich, it wasn't supposed to turn out this way. And that is the absolute truth. You work all those years, you want to retire with your loved one and do whatever you want to do in retirement. But she said, you know, it wasn't supposed to turn out that way. And it wasn't. My father died 4 years ago. And my mother had dementia like Phil. And then she died last December. And my mother got to the point where her dementia, she didn't remember my father. Which was a blessing, you know, because of the grief. It's bad to have dementia, but it's a blessing in the way that she couldn't remember about my father. And I don't know if Phil got like that or not. I don't know if Phil got to the point where she couldn't remember Lloyd. And she thought it was similar. Because, you know, the way that I noticed she loved him was that either dementia or her passing would be the only piece in the rest of it she got. Because, you know, that the way that it was. So, when we had celebration of life for my father and for my mother, you know, I kept telling my brothers and sisters, I had 2 older brothers and a younger sister, I kept telling them, I said, let's not just get together when somebody dies. And I kind of need to put that out to everybody out there, because sooner or later, one of your brothers and sisters is going to bury you. And don't stay, we should have got together more. Get together as much as you can. I know I have people, that's why next week, at the end of next week, I'm at a family reunion in my house. I have people from Nebraska, Illinois, Ohio, Arizona coming to my house. Because, you know, you want to get together with your family and not get so preoccupied with being, with working and going to school, do all this kind of things like that. You know, get together when you can with you know, and celebrate your brothers and your sisters and your parents. Because, you know, eventually one of them's going to bury you. You know, Phil was my boss, but she was my friend. She was my mentor. She was a role model for me. And she really directed me to make me a better person simply by leading with example. And sure, there were times when she had to correct me and say, no, that's wrong, that's not the way to think about it, this is the way to do it. She did that with a lot of people. She got everybody to the point that they made better, Phil made other people better people just by being around them. You know, and her legacy lives on in more people than you know. But I mean, it truly lives on in my heart, her legacy does, but it truly lives on in her kids and in her family and their kids. And that, you know, continue, if y'all would, the legacy that lives on in you is earn the legacy that Bill left you. I mean, earn it. And know that you came from good, strong upbringing. Because, you know, thinking about your mother, thinking about Lloyd, you know, you have a legacy to uphold, and it's a tough one, you know, because both of them were tough. So, you know, to kind of end talking, you know, the pain that you feel now is from the happiness that you had before. I mean, that's part of the deal. You know, the pain that you have now is from the happiness you had before. And you know, grief and love are conjoined, and you can't have one without the other. So yeah, we grieve for Phil, but because we loved him. You know, and we grieve hard because we loved her hard. But you know, I hate that she's not here, but I'm glad she was. And I'm glad she touched everybody's life that she did. So may God comfort all who mourn, and may the memory of Phil Wilson forever and always be a blessing to us.
Amen.
Amen.